And my husband's like, hey, I love you, but I don't know what's going on. You're either super angry or you're so depressed you don't even want to do anything anymore.
Klonopin is one of the most commonly prescribed anxiety medications, but over the last few decades, its use has declined as research has shown it can actually worsen anxiety over time. Despite this, many patients are still prescribed it long term, often without adequate warnings from their doctors. In today's video, we speak with Paige, who was put on Klonopin at just 17 years of age. The decision to take this medication led to 8 years of steadily worsening mental health, followed by a brutal withdrawal that she is still recovering from. Paige also opens up about the serious risks of birth defects associated with Klonopin, which led to a heart-wrenching decision to terminate a pregnancy, a choice that continues to haunt her to this day. Thank you for joining us for this powerful and important story. Hi, I'm Dr. Josef. It's my pleasure to be joined today by Paige. Paige has a very interesting story to share with us. She's going to talk about how taking benzodiazepines worsened her mental health, led to a teratogenic effect on a baby she was carrying that led to the termination of the pregnancy, and then also how she developed a protracted withdrawal injury. So we're going to be covering all of this in today's interview. So, Paige, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and speak with me about this.
Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to voice my story.
Yeah. So, Paige, let's start here. So, it sounds like, looking back on things, you believe that a benzodiazepine, Klonopin, I believe, actually worsened your mental health. Could you tell me that story? Why do you believe that was the case?
Yeah, so I was prescribed it for my agoraphobia, and I was taking it as prescribed by my doctor, and I found that it worsened my moods. It would actually make me more depressed, like breakdown, sobbing, having full mood swings, and I actually had a lot of anger. I realized over time. The only reason why I believe it was the Klonopin was because I never had this issue beforehand. I wasn't myself, if that makes any sense.
And Paige, did this happen immediately, or was this something that you noticed gradually developing over time?
I think I noticed it gradually happening over time, especially like a year or two later of just consistently taking it every day.
At the beginning, was it helpful?
It really wasn't like it didn't cure my panic attacks. It almost just felt like I was drinking a couple of beers, enough for me to like kind of sleep, but I don't think it actually helped.
Okay, so you're about 2 years into this. Give me a sense of, kind of, flesh it out a little bit. What did you start noticing that was just kind of off about your mood that you thought was
Yeah.
drug related? Yeah, yeah.
I just started withdrawing a lot. I would be in the shower just crying, not wanting to deal with anyone or talk to anyone, which is really unusual for me because I had friends and I had a significant other, and I just didn't want anything to do with anyone. I would withdraw from everything.
What other things did you notice about either your mental state or the thoughts that you were having that just seemed off to you?
Yeah, I would just be depressed and crying and feeling resentful of my life, just having this weird, I guess, angst about myself that wasn't me at all.
And did you know it was drug related at the time, or did you think that something else was going on?
I didn't think it was drug related at the time just because it was so normalized to me. Like my grandmother was taking Klonopin and my mom was. I just thought because of like the trauma that I went through my life, I thought, well, maybe it's just catching up with me and I'm kind of having a mental breakdown about it.
And what happened over time to make you kind of move from this place of, hey, it's trauma catching up with me, maybe this is a genetic thing, my family is also on this. What tipped the scales for you to make you start to say, well, could my drug be doing this?
Yeah, when I was eating lunch out with my now husband. I got barbecue sauce. It was at this restaurant on my dress, and I remember just being so angry and so upset that the whole day was ruined. And like, I didn't even want to continue going out and go shopping and all that. I just felt like everything was ending for me. And my husband's like, "Hey, I love you, but I don't know what's going on. You're either super angry or you're so depressed you don't even want to do anything anymore." So him kind of pointing that out was like, oh my God, he's right. Like, I have find no joy in doing anything in life anymore.
Hmm. Were you on any other drugs at that time?
No, at that time I was just taking Klonopin.
Okay. And was there anything else going on in your life that you could point to say, yeah, this is this this kind of reaction would make sense in the context of this stress happening?
Honestly, no. Realistically, I should have been the happiest in my life. Like, I just got my career going. I was about to get married. Like, there was nothing that honestly could have prompted that reaction.
Yeah. And how long on the drug? How long had you been on the drug when this barbecue on sauce on the dress moment happened?
8 years.
8 years. Okay. All right. And so you've been on it for 8 years. And how old were you when you started?
I was 17 years old.
Okay, so you're around 25. Walk us forward from that. He says this thing, and you start to say, yeah, there's something not quite right. How did things unfold from then on?
I tried doing like therapy. I started like, using online services, and I was like, I didn't really feel like it helped. And then we were on the topic of trying to have a baby, and I'm like, okay, I think it is time for me to get off this medication. I felt like I was in a stable part of my life. I should work on things.
What happened next when you started to try and come off?
I had severe withdrawals.
Before we go into that, I'm going to take a brief aside just to talk about worsening mental health with benzodiazepines. So it is really, really common that people who take these medications long term start to become more anxious over time. And it can happen in a couple of ways. One way that I see it happening is people just start to develop a new type of anxiety that they haven't had before. Commonly, people will report that they start to develop obsessive thoughts or sticky thoughts that come out of nowhere that are really unusual. This, in fact, happened to me when I was taking Xanax, and so it's a symptom that I know well. But others will also just report like mood instability. And I think one of the reasons for that is, if you take a short-acting benzo or even drugs like Ambien as well, you actually start to go into withdrawal in between the doses. And that can make people seem moody or irritable or short. And that's just another way that this drug tends to make people feel worse in the long run. In the worst cases, I've actually seen people get misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder from the mood swings as well. And so, yeah, what happened to you was really common. So let's jump back in now, and let's talk about how did you decide to come? How were you advised to come off the Klonopin? Was it gradual? Was it quick? Tell me about that first taper, Paige.
Yeah, so I actually contacted my psychiatrist, and I was like, hey, I really want to start weaning off of this. And I honestly told her I would like to just be off of medication. She actually tried to argue with me that most people who take, Klonopin or Xanax, anything like that they're going to be on them for life. And she tried to talk me out of it.
Did you know
And
you were agreeing to that when you were put on that at age 17?
no, not at all. The only thing that I was told was don't abruptly stop taking it because you could have a seizure. And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So go on. So she tells you that you probably shouldn't come on. Yeah. Unknown to you, you're taking something that your doctor believes that you must be on for the rest of your life. But I know the story doesn't end there. So keep on going.
Yeah. So she told me to try to break the Klonopin, and I did, but I wasn't getting even breaks, so it was kind of just messing with me. So I was like, "Is there something else I can do?" Um, and she was like, she suggested, "Well, let's take Valium because it acts in your system longer, and it's a little bit easier to break the dosages down more accurately." So I agreed to it. And I guess when she converted the milligrams, she underdosed it by a full milligram.
Oof. Yeah. Okay. So walk us forward from there. I know from doing a lot of drug tapering that swapping between benzodiazepines is a very high risk period. And so, what were your symptoms like during this transition?
Immediately, I felt extremely dizzy and disoriented. And that following night, after taking it, I tried to go to sleep and try to just sleep it off. I just thought it's just me adjusting to a different medication. And I actually woke up shaking uncontrollably, and my husband was freaked out. He was like, "I need to call 911. I don't know what to do." So that
Mhm.
was an awful experience. I cannot explain to anyone.
Okay. So what happened next?
I immediately tried to call the doctor's
Mhm.
office to let her know, like, "Hey, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I'm just having a bad reaction." And she just was like, "No, you're just adjusting. Like, that happens a lot. Like, Valium affects differently than Klonopin."
Did you adjust eventually?
No, it actually got so bad. And even trying to like implement like clonidine, which is like a blood pressure medication,
Mhm.
um, I eventually switched back to taking Klonopin.
Walk us forward from there. What happened over the next couple of months? Did you stabilize? Were you feeling better? Did things get worse? What happened?
Things actually got worse. I started having more withdrawal like symptoms. I couldn't sleep. I was sweating, nausea, neuropathy. I just felt like my whole body was on fire. And my panic attacks were back at a 10. So I couldn't even operate going to work half the time.
Mhm. And what did you think was going on at the time? Because I mean, you were on the Klonopin, they took it away, they put you back on, but you're feeling worse. How did you understand, um, this sudden illness that had taken over your life?
Honestly, I just started, and I know this is terrible, but I started Googling about, getting off of Klonopin and people's stories. And I realized I was going through severe withdrawals. And I actually found your channel in the midst of all
Okay,
of this. So I realized, oh no, I'm going through severe withdrawal.
okay. Now, just to give the listeners out there kind of a texture of what it means to be in severe withdrawal, could you just share what was a bad day like for you when you were at your worst?
Like the symptoms.
Yeah, the symptoms, like
Okay.
what, walk us through the symptoms that you would feel on a real bad day.
Yeah. On a really bad day, it, it was terrible. So, I wouldn't get any sleep, like at all. At most, maybe a couple minutes. And then I would try to go to work, and I'm in like sheer terror, like the worst depersonalization, feeling disconnected. I just felt like I was on fire, my body, my everything. I had like my left, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. The left side of my body was in so much pain. I contacted my doctor asking, "Hey, like, am I having a heart attack? Like, what's going on?" And I could not eat. If I tried to eat or drink anything, I was vomiting. I was sweating. It just was so uncomfortable. I felt like I couldn't even exist or get comfortable. Um, I felt very like inner restlessness, which turned out to be akathisia.
Hmm. Yeah. And so you're in this place, yeah, you're suffering immensely from these symptoms. Did you have a plan on how you were going to get better? Like, how did you conceptualize how to even get yourself out of this hell that you had landed in?
I got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm getting through the worst part of it. So I'm like, it has to get better, right? And I just slowly just started trying to taper myself off of the medication.
Mm-hmm. And how did you do your taper?
I was breaking it up, and then I tried to get a new psychiatrist to get a different opinion on how to do it. And she tried to try a couple medications to try to help the symptoms of it. So I ended up just getting a scale and cutting the pills gradually over time.
Mm-hmm. And give us a sense of the trajectory of improvement. So after you go through that transition, the Klonopin to the Valium, everything gets flared up. Did things stay like that? Are they still like that now? Have they improved? What's happened over time?
I have windows of good periods. Right now, I feel like I'm pretty stable, but I feel like it took like 6 months to get into kind of a good window.
How long has it been since you were um, originally hurt from that Klonopin to Valium crossover? How much time has passed since then and now?
A little bit over a year, actually.
Okay,
Like
great. All
about
right.
yeah, about a
Yeah.
year and 6 months since that initial drop.
Okay. And so it sounds like things were really bad for 6 months, and then at the 6 month mark, you started to have windows. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And since you started having windows, have things been stable? Have you had any improvements in that since then? What's been going on?
I was having a good slope and I felt like I was starting to stabilize. And then I actually started to develop what I know now was dysautonomia and POTS. I thought well, maybe I'm just having worse withdrawal. I was trying to work at a new job, and I couldn't even stand up long periods of time without my heart going up.
Okay.
Mm.
And how long after that original flare of symptoms with the Klonopin Valium cross, how long between then and when you developed the dysautonomia?
Honestly, I want to say maybe at like 3 months.
3 months. Okay. So another thing that I'll mention with protracted withdrawal injuries is sometimes all the symptoms don't really hit at once. Um, One of the big precipitating factors that triggers this in many cases is a transition between meds or dropping the dose too much. And many people will report that there's almost this kind of honeymoon period where you don't feel great, but it's okay. And what I hear a lot is that at month 3, 4, somewhere around there, sometimes even at month 6, the floor falls out and then you just get pummeled with all of the symptoms. And so there's this kind of delayed onset of symptoms after that, whatever that factor is, that transition, which is pretty common. Another thing is that symptoms of dysautonomia are really common in protracted withdrawal injuries from antidepressants and benzodiazepines. And the reason that is that the withdrawal seems to cause kind of global neurological damage, but one system it particularly affects is the autonomic nervous system. Now, these are the neurons that control the parts of your body that you're not consciously aware of. These are things like your eyes dilating or your blood vessels dilating or your heart beating as well. And so what often happens in these protracted withdrawal injuries is, especially at the start when people are having a lot of these symptoms, is their heart will just beat like crazy for no reason. I mean, they could be sitting down, they could be not stressed, and all of a sudden have a heart rate of 150 for like half an hour, something like that. And it's so worrying to people that they often go in and out of emergency rooms and hospitals, and they get a lot of EKGs at the beginning because they think they're going to die. Um, but it is a very common manifestation of these protracted withdrawal injuries. So before we move on, well, actually, what's your life like now? So it sounds like you're about a year into this now, or
Yeah.
longer. Yeah.
I've been
Okay.
officially off of it since June 26th.
Okay. Um, what is a day like for you now? Are you able to work? How are symptoms affecting you? Help us understand that.
Yeah, today I had to leave my career completely. I physically and mentally could not do it anymore. I work from home and I do like customer service and IT work, and I have to, travel to my grandmother's for the internet, but I can't even drive myself half the time. My agoraphobia came back like tenfold from this whole situation of withdrawal. So I'm slowly doing exposures just to do things like driving or going to the grocery store, just normal things in life.
How do you feel about the future? Do you feel like this is kind of it? It's not going to get better? Do you feel hopeful? What's your mindset like at the moment?
I honestly feel a little hopeless with how I'm feeling, and I'm worried that things are not going to improve. But I
Hmm.
know that they will. I feel like it'll be a little bit easier to heal from this over time.
And that's a really normal place to be at about a year in. And what I want to say is that any day now, you could step down to a lesser level of symptoms. And it's really common for people after this happens for them to feel hopeless, to feel like things are never going to get better and that the healing is not going to take place. And in fact, one of the symptoms of protracted withdrawal injury is a very pessimistic and highly anxious mental state that is just pervasive. It's always there. And so it colors the way people see things. And so here's what's in store for you, Paige. And what I see happening with a lot of people is you have to hang on in blind faith until the symptoms kind of step down another level. And what you're going to find is that could be tomorrow, could be next week, could be next month, something like that. Your symptoms will lessen to a point where you're able to do more of the things that you enjoy, whether it's being with your husband, getting out in the world, and your life will shift. Yeah, your perspective will shift because you'll start to see that there are reasons to keep on going. You know, that there was this beautiful life that you had and it's waiting for you. That can take some time to happen. But just based on your trajectory so far and that you're having windows 6 months in, I would say it's around the corner for you, Paige. And if you just hang on a little longer, you're going to start to have those glimpses and the hope will come back. Tell me about the support that you've been getting from medical professionals during this. What's that been like for you?
Incredibly frustrating, just because I feel like benzodiazepine withdrawal is not really known in the medical community. And I've been to the ER and they just kind of look at you like you're crazy. Um, Even a therapist I actually stopped seeing and I got a new one is because he suggests I actually continue and reinstate my Klonopin. So that's incredibly frustrating when you're trying to heal and withdraw from it.
I want to change gears now. Um, Before we hit record, we were talking about the teratogenic effects of Klonopin. And for those unfamiliar with that term, it's a term we use when a drug can cause birth defects. And this was something that had happened to Paige. Paige, could you just share your story about what you went through when you conceived during while taking Klonopin?
Yeah, so I was 18 years old and I was finally working and getting over the hump of the agoraphobia the first time. And I conceived a child. And so after that scary initial time, I reached out to my psychiatrist about it because I wasn't sure, like, can I take medication while I'm pregnant? And he actually advised me that I would need to terminate the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm. And what was that based on? Was this was there any scan or anything like that?
So no, that's the crazy thing. I blindly trusted a medical professional and he said you had 3 days to get off of it or this will happen to you.
So, I mean, a lot of people will give birth while taking benzodiazepines, and there is a there is a slight increased risk of congenital abnormalities from what I've seen. And so people can have things like cleft lips, but that is quite rare. You know, a lot of people will give birth to children who are completely normal despite taking benzodiazepines. But it sounds like your doctor told you something quite different.
Yeah, I was really taken back and heartbroken about that. And coming like a year later or 2 years later, after talking to a couple of medical professionals, they said that that was more than likely a rare like side effect from taking it while pregnant.
How has that affected you? I guess moving forward with the termination and all of that, when you look back on that now.
I have PTSD from it just because that was such a traumatic thing to have to go through. And mourning that loss every single day, it's also a huge reason why I wanted to get off Klonopin because I'm engaged and I was like, okay, I want to finally have a safe, healthy pregnancy. I don't ever want to go through that ever again.
Paige, what haven't we covered, which you think is, which we've missed about your story?
I hate to I don't want to demonize any kind of doctor, but I was just blindly taking medications since I was 13 years old, like 16 different kind of medications. And I wish I didn't blindly just took them and I did my research and I actually got therapy because looking back at it, I wasn't a mentally unstable person who needed chemicals. I needed coping mechanisms and someone to help me work through them rather than just take a pill and here you go and solve your issues that way.
Paige, I'm out of questions, but I want to say thank you so much for agreeing to come on and share your really important story.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
If you're interested in learning more about the risks of psychiatric medications and birth defects, you won't want to miss this interview with Dr. Adam Urado.